Good morning, everybody. You're tuned into Crackcore, and today I've decided we're going to be talking about the Kyle Rittenhouse case. I'm only joking. Fuck that guy. Anyway, fuck that case. Propaganda. Fucking propaganda, man. All of it. Anyway, so I finished a book yesterday by Ken Wilber, The Theory of Everything. It's been on my list to finish for some time now, but I eventually got to the end of it yesterday, and I'll be honest, it's fantastic. If you get the opportunity to flick through it or to crack on it with Audible or something, skip to the final chapter. You'll get the summarized version. Don't get me wrong, all the information in there is fantastic and it's well worthy of taking on board. The integral view of the world. And I'm just going to go over a few things about that in the hope that, I don't know, perhaps it'll whet your appetite enough for you to go and experience that information for yourself, because I do believe that everybody could benefit from having a little bit more of an integral view on life, which is basically what the book is about. You know, it's the integral worldview, and what that means is integrating everything that you are and integrating everything that everybody else is. Because kind of the way he puts it across is only through having an integrative view of yourself, based on the microcosm of what you are with regards to the macrocosm of the universe and everything that is in existence. There's that as above, so below analogy again. Isn't it funny how all of these great minds seem to have that very similar wavelength to what they're saying? It's the old micro, macro stuff. You know, we are all a reflection of that which is around us. But he's saying that based on the notion that everything is atoms, you get the atom, you get the molecules, etc., etc., you know, the nucleus. Ultimately, one cannot survive further down the chain of existence, of evolution, without the previous stages, you know, coming before it. You know, let's just say you've got a tree and you've got a few birds sat in the tree. If you kill the birds, the tree remains. If you kill the tree, well, then they both disappear, don't they? You've got no tree and no birds. Because now the birds have got nowhere to hang on to, nowhere to be, so they go somewhere else. So, in similar terms, you get the atom, and then you get the molecules after that, so on and so forth. So when he talks about the integrative aspect of the way we should view ourselves, we all start at point zero. We're all born at the start. And we have to go through these different aspects of evolution in order to reach enlightenment. You can't just fucking be born enlightened, you know. We all start at the beginning. We have to go through egocentric, you know, sociocentric, ethnocentric, fucking, you know, world-centric, spiritual-centric, whatever, you know. So what he's saying is, if we've got this idealistic view of the world, of how we have this idealistic design of how we want the world to be, you know, no race wars, no religions, no wars based on God, well then we're banging a dead drum. It's never going to happen. quite simply, if you've reached that point, well, then that means that you've kind of evolved past it, sure, because you can see the fucking, the insanity in it. But other people haven't moved past it yet, nor will they ever. Or, more to the point, nor will we ever be rid of people that haven't. Simply because everybody is born at zero, and everybody moves through these different evolutionary stages in their own time. Some people reach it to this point, others to this, others to that, and it's as simple as that. So we are always going to have fascism. We are always going to have fucking horrible people in the world. We're always going to have people that want to go out there and be bullies, tyrants. You know, we're always going to have these things. We're always going to have religion. Let's face it. Because religion is part of this ethnocentric mindset where you start to believe in this tribalized, you have this tribalized mentality. Therefore, secular. You know, so people in that mindset tend to be, you know, gravitating towards things like religion because it feeds that aspect of who they are at that point. So we've all been through it. We've all had a belief system at one point, haven't we? Only to move past it. And if you haven't moved past it yet, one day you probably will. You know, it's as simple as that. One day you probably will move past your ethnocentric mind state. It's the nature of the game. When you can reach what he says is a world-centric mind state, well, ultimately that's when you start to have a more of an integral view of reality. Now, simply, integralism is, you know, for want of a better term, live and let live. And in my own understanding of it, it's the most progressive way for a person to evolve is quite simply to accept not only themselves but other people. Because if you can accept yourself and other people, well, what is acceptance as opposed to forcing change? Because if you, obviously they're both directed in the same, you're going to get the same outcomes, but in a slightly different way. You've got one that is negatively charged based on the approach, one that is positively charged based on its approach. Acceptance will ultimately allow all of these different aspects of who you are to come flourishing to the surface, and you will therefore learn lessons in life based on who you are and how you interact with the world around you and the other people in a more integrative way. You'll have all these different aspects of your character working against one another or with one another, for want of a better term, because they're all serving each other in regards to how they're going to interact with themselves inside of you based on the outside processing of information, the outside induction of the information that's coming in, which is actually causing those things within you to become apparent with regards to those things that you are now accepting about yourself. For instance, ego. Nowadays, there's this big drive on cutting out the ego completely. Well, I beg to differ. I don't think we ought to at all. Because only through being an egotistical wanker are you able to learn not to be an egotistical wanker. And the more times you're an egotistical wanker, well, then the more opportunities you've got to learn not to be. If you simply cut out your ego, well, then you're cutting out the lessons that your ego has to teach you. Now, this isn't carte blanche, you know, for people just to go out and be a prick, because that's a completely different thing altogether. However, what I'm saying is, and I think what Ken Wilber is saying, if we have a more holistic view, not holistic, but holistic view of ourselves, it will serve us better than to simply go into it and trying to force this change, which is, I think, what the approach is generally nowadays. It's this forcing of change. It's like, you must do it this way because this is the right way, which is dogma, which is indoctrination, which is tantamount to fascism. You're not allowing people to develop and what have you on their own, of their own accord, in their own sweet time, based on their own personal interaction with the world around them, based on their own personal experience and worldview. If people are supposed to elevate to different levels of existence, well, then they have to do it on their own. They have to do it themselves, of course, because they're the only ones moving through it. They're the only ones that are ever going to be evolving. It's their evolutionary process, so it has to be done with their own tools. And what your tools are those characteristics, all of those characteristics within you. Even if someone says that they're not great, well, then that's their opinion based on their own personal level of perspective. It's not right or wrong. What is right for you is how you interact with this planet and with this experience we call life, and how you process that information based on where you are on your own personal evolutionary fucking journey. And it's as simple as that. I think that's what Ken Wilber's saying. If I'm wrong, if I'm only half right, then I apologise to fucking, to Mr. Wilber for getting it all wrong. But it seems to me that acceptance is the stronger force for change, because quite simply, if we integrate, or if we, and this is where people say the shadow work comes in, because you've got to get to know your shadows. And I know that Doshin Roshi talks a lot about this, and he's another integral Zen guy. And I think that's where this comes in, because we try and lock away these things, therefore we never learn from them. We're fucking stifling our own personal growth, man, So when we're looking at world, and I personally think we should treat the integral vision as a filter, as like a sieve, and we should run every single aspect of our existence with regards to politics, decisions made by politicians, the fucking pandemic. What we should do is quote unquote, lowercase p. What we should do is run that through the integral fucking filter, the integral sieve, and see what happens. Where do we land on it? Because, you got things like the trans movement. If people live and let live, if people accept people for what they are, and I spoke a lot about the trans movement in the last video that I did. But if we, my general overview was acceptance, as opposed to the fucking row that's created through the forcing of people's opinions on others. Acceptance is actually the way we move forward. Which is why, this video has been triggered today, because ultimately, as I finished that book yesterday and I finished that recording the day before, I basically thought to myself, well, this, funnily enough, synchronistically enough, is along that same thought path, isn't it? Because it's about acceptance. And, Mr. Wilber himself will say that, the integral worldview should be applied to all aspects of life. And I'd have to agree. And obviously then I started thinking about that video and what I said in it, and it does tend to back up the acceptance aspect of at least that subject, which is why, chain of thought, well, if it works with that, well, then maybe it works with other things too. Because at the minute, that's a very sore subject for a lot of people, but the acceptance of others is what we need to have. And it works both ways, because that's what integralism is. It works not both ways, but all ways. And that's that. That's it. Because if we have acceptance of other people and they have acceptance of us, well, then therefore, like I said in that video, we can have a personal accord. And let's just say, for instance, you get one person who's unwilling to accept that somebody wants to be called and be seen and known as something that they're not physiologically, naturally are. If they're not a natural born man or a woman and they want to be fucking seen as such and referred to as such, and somebody disagrees and says no, based on their own personal level and worldview, well, then that gives them an opportunity to learn, doesn't it, about acceptance. Just like it gives the trans person an opportunity to learn about acceptance too. Accepting that sometimes people aren't going to fucking agree with you. And that's okay. You can still get on with your life and do what you fucking need to do, and just choose not to spend time with that person should they rub you up the wrong way. It's everybody's choice, and it's everybody's right to make it. And acceptance is literally the way we move forward. Accepting everything about yourself and then living yourself within that acceptance of who you are is quite literally the only way that you can evolve as a human being, as a person, as a soul, as a spirit. Because how else can you? We've got it, so we need to use it. Instead of using it as a weapon, we should use it as a tool. You can kill somebody with a fucking hammer and a saw. But you can also build a fucking house. So, what do you want to do? What are we going to do in society? Are we going to weaponize these things against one another? Or are we going to use them as personal tools to elevate ourselves so that integratively we elevate everybody? Because by having acceptance of other people, you're allowing other people to go on their personal journey too, and you're not stifling them. As a matter of fact, it's a great disservice to the human race, to the general population of planet Earth, to actually force your opinions on other people in such a way where you're saying, this is how I fucking tell you to believe, this is how I tell you to speak. Because ultimately what you're doing, and by telling people that they need to fucking get rid of this aspect of their character and get rid of that aspect because it's fucking distasteful, well, it makes me feel a certain way. By telling people that, actually you are holding back the planet's evolutionary process. It's quite simple. It's live and let live. And this is the fucking tragedy of it, because live and let live, I'm pretty sure if you translate the Bible into fucking layman's terms, it's there in black and white. I dare say the fucking satanic Bible says live and let live. I dare say the Quran says it. I dare say the fucking Torahs and all the other fucking religious texts, the Dead Sea Scrolls and shit, I dare say they all have the backbone of live and let live. The Vedic texts, all of these things. I bet if fucking aliens came down to this planet right now and fucking landed in a field somewhere, the crop circle would say live and let live. I think it's simple at this point, man. But it's about, I think where that term gets it wrong is it kind of implies that you have to accept other people and not yourself, because it's more of a projective statement, isn't it? Live and let live. The emphasis, in my opinion, comes into the let live. Maybe because there's more syllables in that part of the fucking phrase after the and. I don't know. It's cognitive. But what I'm saying is, we need to let live ourselves too. That's my opinion. I think it's a beautiful way to live, personally. And if you look at it that way, where's the harm? Where's the harm, man? The more people that start to live in that way, the more people that will. Because ultimately it's like a fucking snowball. Evolution will happen, quite simply because it's not being stifled anymore. So that's where we are today, which is Tuesday the 18th of April 2023. And this is Cragcore saying thank you very much for viewing this video. Thank you to the regular viewers and the new ones. And this was the Kyle Rittenhouse case. I'm going to wish love and peace to all things everywhere. I mean that. And this is Cragcore signing off. Peace.